and Sam, keeping it true. Watching old movies so you don't have to. With the benefit of hindsight, we'll see what the movies truly offer. Or did they change history?
Good evening. Welcome to the Benefit of Hindsight podcast, the movie podcast in which a father and son talk about movies that they watched together long ago. We give the movie a memory score, and then we rewatch the movie to see whether or not the movie is better or worse than we remember. With me, as ever, is my son Sam. Evening, Sam.
Good evening, Dad. How are you doing?
All good. Good week for you?
Yeah, not too bad. How's your week been?
It's been okay.
Good.
Busy. I have been particularly busy sifting through our emails.
Oh.
And we have had another email. And another fascinating question. Before I go on with the email, I should say we got some lovely feedback from Josie in Banbury, who said she really enjoyed the podcast and she's hooked. Kiss, kiss. So thank you, Josie from Banbury.
Perfect. It's like our number one fan.
I think she probably is. The email is all the way from Hertfordshire. And this is John from Hertfordshire. And he said...
Hi, John.
Hi, John. He said, Dear Dean and Sam, enjoying the podcast, and I really enjoyed your podcast on Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which you described as your most disappointing cinema experience. So his question is as follows. Which movie was the experience that exceeded your expectations? Do you want to go with that one first, Sam?
Maybe. I don't actually know. Is it more like the experience as a whole or just watching the film, do you think?
I don't know. I was thinking about this because it's a really good question from John. And the questions that we're getting from people via email are really good. And I should also tell people that we don't discuss them before I read them out. So I manage the email. And so Sam's not heard this question before. So I have the advantage of having had a chance to think about it. So I was thinking about this, and I don't want to give a future podcast away, but I think the movie that exceeded my expectations that we watched together, and it doesn't have to be one that we watched together, would be, I would say 2009 Star Trek, the new Star Trek saga.
Do you know what it is? That was actually the first film that came to my mind, interestingly enough.
Wow.
Because that was one, that, like Indiana Jones, where I knew you'd loved it growing up and everything, so I was quite interested and excited to see it myself, and it was, I think for me it was like, wow, this is actually quite good. You do have taste.
Yeah, no, because I had watched all of the Star Trek movies throughout my childhood, and I really did like the Star Trek movies. I've watched them all many times, and so I was very skeptical of Star Trek 2009. But no, I really enjoyed it. So
yeah,
I would say that's the one that I'm going to go with for the movie that exceeded my expectations when I saw it at the cinema. Yeah, really like that one. So thanks, John from Hertfordshire, for your question. And thanks, Josie, for your lovely feedback. You can get us via email, the Benefit of Hindsight podcast at gmail.com. Keep the emails coming. We love your questions. We love your feedback. And thanks very much for that. So, Sam, Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Before we go on, can you remember what score we gave it? This is the bit that we should definitely check. I think you gave it...
I gave it a 3 out of 10.
And I gave it 4 out of 10.
Yep.
From memory, giving us an overall memory score of 3.5 out of 10.
That's right, yep.
And for those of you who are new to the podcast, we then went away and watched the movie again. And we're here to discuss the movie with the benefit of hindsight. So, I don't really know where to start with this. I might let you start.
Okay, that's fair, yeah. I don't know, it is quite complicated of a place to start. I think one of the first lines in it, which I've written down and made a note of for some reason, was just, I guess I was wrong. There was no danger after all. And then just an explosion, which I just think is really funny. But that is the beginning of the film. I think, for me, my score has definitely changed. I mentioned last week that I was quite looking forward to watching this one, and that kind of stayed with me the whole time. But before I watched it and then when I was watching it, I don't know, I don't want to give my score away too early, but I was right, I did actually enjoy watching it. Whether that's a good thing or not, we'll find out, I suppose. But I think, like the Phantom Menace, there's a lot of positives and negatives of it too.
Right, very interesting. I, I've got a list of things I want to mention. First of all, I want to invent a new swear word.
Okay.
Can I share like okay? And the new swear word I'd like. So imagine something's gone really badly, and you're expressing disappointment or frustration. I think we should enter into the English language the following phrase: Obi-Wan's beard.
Yeah, I'm on board with that. That's great.
It's like Obi or by the beard of Kenobi. It's okay. So I found it so distracting throughout the movie. That beard. Did you? Is it me? I mean, I've done some research on Obi-Wan's beard.
Right.
Did you find it distracting in any way?
It's quite interesting actually that you bring that up, because I was going to make reference to something else that I want you to watch, which is on YouTube. It's the Oral Knots. I don't know if you've heard of them.
No.
They do loads of Star Wars themed videos, and they have like an entire series where they've basically rewritten as a parody the entire saga. And they've done a video, I'm sure, where they've made it was like Star Wars facts, and one of them was that in the scene with Dex in the diner, there's two different Obi-Wan Kenobi, so it's Ewan McGregor's brother who's playing Obi-2 or something like that. So between shots it cuts out, and they're supposedly playing pranks with the director, George Lucas, to be like a different actor. It sort of explains the hair changes that's going on. That's funny.
Well, I noticed that in the scene in the diner that, hang on, that's a different beard. Cut away, that's a different beard. It also happens in the scene on Camino when he's talking to the big long alien thing. Whose name I can't remember. The beard keeps changing. I do know why, though. They had to call Ewan McGregor back for reshoots some time after the movie had been shot. So the beard's gone. So they gave him a fake beard, which appears to just be some tufts of hair glued onto his face.
Yeah, it's
So,
not the
Obi-Wan's beard is now Benefit of Hindsight podcast code for when it all goes horribly wrong.
I really like Kenobi's beard.
I realise this is not high-level film analysis, but it's like I couldn't watch it, and I was sort of counting beard changes throughout,
Really?
and then I got bored after 17.
Wow.
So yeah, Obi-Wan's beard. Okay, but to get serious for a while, if we can, when we're talking about Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, I'm gonna reference a thing that everybody references, and you go on the internet, you will find this as the first thing, and that's the dialogue.
Yeah, I think I had a bit of a love-hate relationship with the dialogue this time around, which was interesting. I think for me there was a lot of, when the dialogue was good, it was good. But when the dialogue was bad, I'm so used to all the memes of it that I still enjoyed it. So like, I Don't Like Sand I was waiting for it. It's brilliant. But it's only because of the memes. And there's like, even in Camino when Obi-Wan's like, that's why I'm here, which is also a meme, which is so really funny. So this time around I didn't have much of a problem with the script. But there are some really good lines, I think. But I think it's only based on who delivered them.
Okay, so I'm going to challenge you to give me a good one.
I won't know it specifically, but it's towards the beginning of the fight on Geonosis where Padme expresses her love to Anakin, and it's the way she delivers those lines. It's just like, it's Star Warsy enough and convincing enough that I just sort of, it made sense, as opposed to I Don't Like Sand. And it was just like, how are those lines both in the same movie? It was just weird, but I don't know.
I have an issue. I've got a couple of lines I want to reference here. I've written them down. Okay, so let me go through some of my favorite lines, and so I'm haunted by the kiss you never should have given me. Yeah, okay. There's one.
There's a scene around that actually where he says, "I just wish I could wish away my feelings," and I hate that so much.
That's the next one on my list. Believe me, I wish I could just wish away my feelings. What?
How do you rewrite that so it's better though?
You can't. Yeah, I don't know. To be angry is to be human, says Padme Amidala. Not quite sure what she means by that. But my absolute favorite line in the whole movie is from the incomparable Jar Jar Binks, and the joke is he says, "Senators, dello feligates."
Wait, I didn't even notice that.
Brilliant.
I think the thing I notice about that scene is just how everything goes wrong because of that one moment later on. But I've never noticed he
Yeah.
says that.
I was going to ask you, because you know these things better than I do. Is it deliberate that Jar Jar Binks is able in three lines of dialogue in that movie to cement himself as the most hated Star Wars character of all time? Not first of all, the line "Dello Feligates." That's not funny. That's not even fair to the character. But then he makes a decision which sets in motion everything that's about to happen. And I just thought that's got to be deliberate to cement Jar Jar, that by this time everybody who's watched Phantom Menace has railed against. Okay, so let's cement him as the most hated character in the entire Star Wars saga, because it's basically his fault.
Yeah, I think there is that, but I think it just sort of shows the overarching plan the whole time. Because before they reveal that it's Jar Jar doing it, it's almost like, oh, who could we get to possibly do that? It's like lingers on Jar Jar, and it's almost like, yeah, we know what you're trying to do. And I think the bigger picture of it sort of makes it work. And I don't know if they purposely tried to make him the reason for it, as in, let's get everybody to hate him. But in a way, it sort of makes sense in the sense of, let's get the stupidest person to make the stupidest decision because it's the easiest way for this plan to work.
That's very good. That I think probably is true. Let's get the stupidest person to make the stupidest decision. Yeah, I like that. That's
When the blame comes back, it's like, well, it was the stupid person who said it, not us. Obviously, I'm not saying the actor's stupid, but you know what I mean.
no, but definitely the character. Let's be honest. So I do think the dialogue is a problem for the movie, though. To get back to that point, I mean, we can laugh at it, but I do think it's very difficult to take some of it seriously.
A bit of the dialogue that I don't really like about it is every sort of now and then, Obi-Wan finishes a sentence with something like, "my very young apprentice," and it's like, why are you saying that? We know Anakin is your apprentice. It's a weird thing to just keep saying. So who's it really for? Because it's just, every now Anakin has a good idea. "Well done, my very young apprentice." As if to be like, oh, so he's very young and is his apprentice. Great, didn't get that.
And it changes over time. "Well done, my very young apprentice. Well done, my young Padawan. Well done, my inexperienced pal." It just seems to change every single time. One of the things that I don't particularly like about the dialogue is the kind of love dialogue between Padme and Anakin. And I know this is recorded as a million memes all over the internet. But actually, if you think about it, that's central to the downfall of Anakin Skywalker. His love for Padme is the thing that's going to mostly, there are other things, convert him, as it were, to the dark side. And it's just thoroughly unbelievable. The dialogue, at least. The fact that they love each other, I don't think that's fine. But it just bothers me a little bit. And I don't know why it bothers me, because it's only a movie, but it just bothers me that this character's downfall is based upon just, some of the worst movie dialogue I can actually think of.
I don't think the dialogue really helps it out either, because it's bad dialogue as it is, and then you're supposed to believe that she's fallen in love with him. Whereas if the dialogue was quite good and then she falls in love with him, that makes sense. But because the dialogue doesn't work, it comes out of nowhere and it's a bit questionable.
Yeah, it is. It's just, I think it's quite well known that George Lucas, when he kind of gives over script writing duties to somebody else, generally the ideas that he has tend to translate better onto the page. So Empire Strikes Back is Lawrence Kasdan, for example, and it's really easy to rail on it. And it's also really easy bandwagon to jump upon the dialogue thing, and I actually don't think it's the worst thing in the movie either. Astonishingly, we can come back to that. Cast wise, okay, we've talked about Ewan McGregor, good actor, struggling I think with dialogue in this one, but I was of course I knew he was in it, but lovely again to see Sir Christopher Lee, wasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there's nothing much more I can say about Christopher Lee that we haven't already said. But he sells any character he plays so well. I do think there was a bit of like lack of dialogue for him in this one, in particular, but I don't know if that's due to the character or the way it was written, because his lines weren't terrible, or at least he could deliver them well enough. But I felt like sometimes he had a bit more to say, but he just didn't get the chance.
Feels like he's a good enough actor to pull it off.
Yeah, exactly.
And he always turns in a decent performance as well. But did you notice? Did you notice the awful mask on the stuntman during the lightsaber fight?
I did actually.
At the
yeah,
end?
it wasn't great. I couldn't tell if it was a mask or CGI, because I know in Revenge of the Sith they do something very similar, but it really stood out, because that was the only thing I was actually paying attention to at that point. Was just like, oh, okay, not good.
I mean, I was looking for it. I was looking to think, I wonder how they do this, because obviously that's not going to be Christopher Lee at this point, is in his 80s. And I thought, oh, well, let's see how they do this. And I thought, it's a bloke in a mask. It's not even a very good mask. It's like flopping around a bit. But yeah, kudos Christopher Lee. We love Christopher Lee, don't we?
We do, yeah, definitely.
I suspect he'll be the actor that features most in the movies that we watch.
Another thing I wanted to say about the cast, which isn't much of like a what do you think of them, but did you notice the Ahmed Best and the Anthony Daniels cameo?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I think I did.
Obviously Ahmed Best is Jar Jar, and then Anthony Daniels is C-3PO, yeah.
Actually, I'll take that back. I knew that it happened and I was looking for it, but I didn't see it. So you'll have to tell me where it happened.
I made sure that I noticed it because it's just fun to see. After the chase with the assassin, where they're in the sort of club and Obi-Wan gets a drink, they're two sort of patrons of the bar. I think Anthony Daniels is only seen when he reacts to Obi-Wan cutting the assassin's hand off, but Ahmed Best is seen twice. I think it's quite cool.
Cool. That is cool.
It's just nice because they're always covered up. That it's just like, let's actually get them on screen for a change.
Yeah, no, it's true. What did you think of Hayden Christensen?
This kind of goes back again to the script thing and the dialogue. I think he's quite good, but I don't think he's very good at delivering the bad dialogue. I think if it was a good script, he'd be fine, but because it's not, it comes across wooden when it shouldn't. Like some of the experienced actors from Phantom Menace are just able to sort of do it and put their own spin on it, whereas he's kind of new to it. So as well, I'm interested to see how he delivers that in Revenge of the Sith. But I did think he was doing his best. He was doing what he could do with it, really. And I do think his back and forth with Ewan was quite good, as well, barring the whole "my young apprentice" lines every now and then.
Yeah. Why do I feel you'll be the death of me one day?
Yeah.
waves big red flag. I thought Hayden. If you think about how Hayden Christensen got cast, and I've got no idea how he got cast, but I guess you are looking for somebody of around that age who can do brooding very well, who can do kind of grumpy late teenager pretty well. I think he does that very well. I think his facial expressions are good. And I think when he's playing angry, he can pull that off. And I think that the script is always in danger of making good actors look bad. Ewan McGregor, Natalie Portman, Christopher Lee, Samuel L. Jackson, we all know these people can act. And yet, in this movie, you would say the acting just isn't very good. But it may well be the words that these poor people are being told to say.
Yeah, I think that's a difficult thing to deal with as well, because it takes away from their abilities just simply because it's hard to read and deliver.
Mm-hmm. Plot-wise, there's a lot of plot, isn't there? There's a lot going on.
There is. One thing that I wanted to mention as well is the assassin thing, where they're trying to kill Padme. And this has been pointed out millions of times before me. But it's ridiculous. Because they're out to kill Padme. And let's see if I can get this right. What happens is, the Emperor, or at this point Darth Sidious, wants to kill Padme. So what does he do? He gets Count Dooku involved. But what does Count Dooku do? He gets Jango Fett involved. But what does Jango Fett do? He gets an assassin involved. And then the assassin gets worms to do it. So it's like, why not just get someone who's actually capable of doing it themselves, rather than this string of different people trying to do the same thing?
Jango Fett, the world's most, or the universe's most hardened assassin, just pay somebody. Just pay somebody else.
Who gets worms to do space worms.
Well, I was watching it, right? You've flown through the air in Coruscant. Well done, you. You've got a little device that can take glass out of a window. Well done, you. Just stick a little gun through the hole.
Exactly.
Pull the trigger. No one's going to wake up. Why think, right, the answer to this is a couple of worms. That'll do it. They just pull the trigger. It was like you're making you're not telling a story very well. You're driving a plot. There's going to be worms. Oh, both of them will need to use the Force to discover the worms. Honestly, they could have shot her in the time that it took for the worm to get anywhere nearer on the bed. I cannot understand why that's even in the movie. I don't understand it.
I don't understand the whole point of it. And if somebody does, please email in and explain. Because why do they want Padme dead? If Palpatine knows exactly what he's doing and every step of the plan that needs to be made, why does he need to take Padme out of the equation when Anakin surely has to fall in love in order to lose her later on? Why does Palpatine want her dead if she's part of the plan? And that I spent half of the movie going, this doesn't make any sense to what I already know.
It's useless on a podcast, but I'm nodding furiously at what you're saying. Well, you could drive a bus through that plot hole. The whole plan requires Padme to not be dead.
Unless the whole point of that is, let's specifically put them together and he's the protector of Padme, and then that's how they fall in love. But let's be honest, it was happening anyway.
Right. Of course, it was always going to happen. Again, you're right. I don't understand why she needs to be killed. Maybe it's to get her out of the way. Maybe his plan is that we're not actually going to kill her. We're going to make people think that she's going to be killed. Hence the worms and the selling on of the assassin job. That's all a plan to get her to go to the field of big cows on Naboo, where she will inadvertently fall in love with the young handsome Jedi. And then we'll have Jar Jar Binks in charge, so he can say stupid things and be the reason why the next 7 movies work.
Yeah, maybe that's just like simply it. That it's like get her out of the way, and then we get Jar Jar to just do the wrong thing. And I'm overthinking it.
It's quite the journey to get there, though, isn't it? You have to. But when you're watching the movie, you're like, "What? I don't understand. I don't understand at all." Do we have an opinion on Padme and Anakin's love story, as in its degree of appropriateness?
Yeah, there's a lot of debate about that, isn't there, with the age gap? I think that's what you're alluding to.
A little bit. I mean, the age gap's fine, right? There's no reason why there can't be an age gap, and it doesn't even matter that he's, I guess, in the movie 19, she's 24. I think that's a reasonable guess for how old they're supposed to be. That's all fine. That's no problem. But the fact that she knew him as a 9-year-old, is I find it a bit odd. But I don't find it odd because it's creepy or anything like that. I don't buy into that. But what I find odd is, why couldn't they just have been the same age?
Yeah, there's no real reason for them not to be honest. I don't know if that was something that was changed early on for Phantom Menace, and they cast someone younger, so they had to change his age a bit. But it doesn't really. There's no real reason for it to be that way.
No, the Phantom Menace works if Padme's 14 and Anakin's 14, or she's 10, he's 10. The movie's still going to work, right? So that makes. I wonder if maybe it's the whole love story is a bit of an afterthought.
But then, does it though? Because obviously you know that Darth Vader has a son and a daughter.
Right. So maybe it's not an afterthought. Maybe you're right. Then maybe it's just an oversight that they could easily have been the same age. In the context of a Star Wars universe, to have a 14-year-old queen and a 14-year-old lost slave boy or a 10-year-old queen and a 10-year-old slave boy would have made zero difference whatsoever.
I think as well, just to add on to that, if he had been 14, that sort of sells the whole Jedi point of, oh, he's too old to train a bit more.
Yeah, also true. Yeah, maybe.
Because then you can see it a bit more obviously, but maybe, I don't know.
Well, even at the age of 9, Yoda says, or somebody says somewhere that he's too old, he couldn't be trained.
That's what I mean, though. And now, a word from this week's sponsor. Welcome to our company, Clones Are You, where we offer a unique solution to all your multitasking needs. Imagine having multiple versions of yourself to handle various tasks efficiently and effectively. Our cloning technology allows you to do just that. Thanks to Clones Are You, I was able to juggle my work, family, and personal life without feeling overwhelmed. Having clones game changer has been a game changer.
I never thought I could be in 2 places at once until I discovered this cloning service. It has saved me so much time and energy. The convenience of having clones to help me with my daily tasks is unparalleled. I highly recommend this company to anyone looking to maximize their productivity.
Experience the power of cloning with Clones Are You. Say goodbye to stress and hello to efficiency. Contact us today to learn more about how we can help you clone yourself for multi-purpose tasks. Clones Are You, bringing power and control to your life. Clones Are You is not responsible for any clone uprisings or suspicious insurgencies. Clones may become passive-aggressive or lazy if threatened with unwanted tasks. Don't let your clone work after midnight. Contact your doctor for clone-related side effects.
When I first watched the movie, I remember being disappointed or didn't find it particularly believable that Anakin Skywalker's downfall was based on this secret love and the death of his mother. And then watching the movie again this time, I thought that probably is enough, actually. With the benefit of hindsight and a bit of age, that probably would be enough to send somebody over the edge of, hate and fear and all of those things. But I've just felt in the movie that particular element of the story wasn't told very well. I don't know what you think about that.
I actually thought the same thing while I was watching it, and I was quite convinced about it, because I think if you put yourself in that character's shoes at that time, you'd do the same thing. You'd react the same way. I don't know if you'd eventually fall down the exact same path of becoming the Dark Lord of the universe, but I think you'd lose it a bit and you'd get a bit mad. And definitely this time around for me, as you say, with the benefit of hindsight, I definitely agree that was the way to go with turning him to the dark side, at least for this film. Did that not answer the question?
It does, but then you get back to the script, okay? And in the script, Anakin decides he's going to go back to his mother on Tatooine, which is great because we go back to Tatooine and we revisit some old characters and we meet the family that's going to take in Luke and all of that. So there's a few character introductions there. Then he dashes off on his speeder into the desert, just in time to go into absolutely the correct tent first time.
I thought that, yeah.
To rescue his mother, who just in time dies in his arms, and that just felt like, well, it's bad storytelling. That we don't. Well, he's used the Force to discover the tent, and he's used the Force to discern when to go. But okay, well then just tell us that, because otherwise we're having to do the storytelling for your script to make sense.
I think I made that point in The Phantom Menace where I said art is subjective, but George Lucas wrote it for himself. And it's like, it just adds that level of, you do have to put the pieces together yourself, you do have to understand it, or they have to make a comic that ties it all together. And I think they could have done it another way with visual storytelling, or even audio at that point. You could have had Shmi make a noise inside the tent. Now, it must be that one, but then again, that's still too obvious, isn't it? But there's always that thing within the real world context where people don't pass away until they've seen someone for the last time. So it's like she's holding on for that moment, and now that she's at peace with it, she can pass away. One thing that as well, just about the script, that I didn't really like is the fact that she starts to say I love you but can't say the word you. So what does she do? She repeats I love. It's like, just use that last breath to say you. I'm sure you'll understand. So I was like, wait, why repeat it? You could have just said you.
It's Our podcast is desperately entertaining because we clearly watch movies together because everything you say, I want to say. Because I just thought that I love. Oh, Last Breath, I love. But you, yeah,
Could have just said it.
That'll work. Yeah, you could have just squeezed you out, couldn't you? Yeah, you're right. I think you're right about that George Lucas thing. If it's true, as George Lucas claimed, that he had all of these stories in his head, right, and that's why eventually Star Wars becomes Episode 4, and in his mind he's already got 1, 2, 3 written, and he randomly chose 4. By the way, I don't think that's true, but he certainly said it was true. Then okay, whatever story's in your head, you got to find a way to get that out. I said that I didn't think the dialogue was the worst thing in the film. So can you guess what I think was the worst thing in the film?
I don't know what else it would be. The CGI, maybe?
That's the one. Ta-da! Right there. How bad is the CGI in this movie?
It's bad. It's not great at all. I think one thing that I've really noticed about it is there's a lot of feathered edges where they've tried to hide that there's either a blue screen or a green screen. So like the hair is slightly feathered. I think at some angles Obi-Wan Kenobi's nose kind of disappears because it's like they're trying to hide it. I mean, I will say that some of the miniature sets that they've used where it's sort of tied together to look real does work. There's a behind-the-scenes story where Natalie Portman is sort of rehearsing running under all of these sort of mechanisms in the droid factory, and she just goes, "Is this a joke? Like, are you pranking us right now?" Because it's just ridiculous. She's just working on blue, and that's it. So I can see her point, but it doesn't look good.
It doesn't, and at all times it didn't look particularly good either. You're dead right. I think that. First of all, I think that the CGI in Phantom Menace is better, and I think they just thought, right, we can really ramp this up now. Okay, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this, and they couldn't. And by the time you've done it, you can't claw it back. I mean, there are just some absolute shockers, particularly things like. And it's always when there's human interaction with CGI. So when Hayden Christensen jumps on the back of the big cow thing, it's so obviously a cartoon, or at least animation.
Yeah, I thought you were going to mention something that I really want to say, but no, that wasn't what it. The CGI pear, where he cuts pear for Padme. It's the bit where it travels back to her fork. She hits nothing and then takes an imaginary bite out of it, and it's so funny. I watched it 2 or 3 times just because it's fantastic. Obi-Wan would kill me if he saw me doing this. So you're doing what? You're not doing anything.
So what? You're not doing anything. Would you like to guess which Oscar Star Wars Episode 2 was nominated for?
Was it actually nominated for something?
It was. It got 1 nomination.
Best soundtrack.
Astonishingly, best visual effects.
Did they actually watch it?
I don't know. Maybe they watched a different one. It didn't win.
Yeah,
it didn't win.
That makes sense.
But it did win an award from the Visual Effects Society for the best matte painting in a motion picture.
Oh, that's fair enough, yeah. They're quite good at... Star Wars movies have always been quite good for the matte painting feature, yeah.
And would you like to know which Golden Raspberry Awards it won?
All of them.
Not quite. It did win Worst Screenplay. Which this next one I think is unfair. It also, but by the way, I think the Golden Raspberry Awards are unfair anyway. But it also won Worst Supporting Actor, Hayden Christensen, and I think that's a bit unfair.
That
because
is
we've said
unfair.
before, actually, I think I don't think he's badly cast. I just think he's not. There's no. All of the actors in that movie don't come out of it well because of the things that they're being told or the dialogue that they're saying. So yeah, you mentioned soundtrack, John Williams again.
There's nothing else to really add. It's always been perfect. There is one song that really stands. Actually, there's 2 things about the soundtrack that stood out for me in this film. The first one is, I think they call it Across the Stars, but it's basically Padme and Anakin's love theme. It's such a great piece of music. I've seen it live as well, which is nice. I know a lot of people have probably seen it live, but it's great. It really delivers the story as well as that. The really interesting thing that I noticed this time around, in the Phantom Menace podcast that we did, I mentioned to you Duel of the Fates and how it's the fate of Anakin between going with Obi-Wan or going with Qui-Gon. And it is used again in this film. And with that sort of idea in mind, it made a lot of sense. And it's when Anakin travels on the speeder all the way to his mum on Tatooine. And it adds, for me, it's like, growing up, it was a cool bit of music. Oh, it's a reference to the other one. But this time around, it was like, this is the duel of his fate of what's about to happen. So he's going to go and take kind of the first steps into becoming Darth Vader. So that's his fate at play. And I just thought it worked really well to bring that back.
Is that your out of pocket take for the week?
It almost was, but it's not for this one.
Okay, so what is Sam's out of pocket take for Attack of the Clones?
Not the actor, but the character, Count Dooku, actually believed that he was in fact the chosen one. And he read the prophecy and thought, this is actually me, because obviously he turns sides and thinks that he might be able to be the one to bring balance to the Force.
Okay. I'm not sure about that one. It's a good one. I like the theory, but it would be, I guess if it's true, it's appeared in a comic somewhere, but I don't know. So if you think that that's true, you can drop us an email, or if you think it's made up, you can drop us an email as well. Benefit of Hindsight podcast @gmail.com.
This was an interesting one to put together, I'll say. But that's without giving too much away.
Box office, we always do the box office of the movie. It made a total of $649 million. And it was the first Star Wars film that was not the number one film in the calendar year that it was released. It was actually the fourth highest grossing movie of 2002. My quiz is, can you name the other three movies from 2002 that beat it at the box office?
So I was thinking that there was a lot of good movies that came out in 2002. And unfortunately, I can only think of two that it could have been. So my first one is Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets.
Correct, that's one.
And the first Spider-Man film.
Two.
But I don't know what Oh, of course. It's Two Towers, isn't it?
Yes, there you go.
Yeah.
So all of those films made...
How did I forget?
Made more. Did you know, by the way, that the Attack of the Clones is the lowest grossing Star Wars movie? Out of all 9 of the movies, this is the lowest gross.
I didn't know that. I can't really see why that would be either. That's interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. But it's the lowest of all of the 9 movies, which I think is interesting. I think it's really, really interesting. So, another question about the movie, what I feel is inconsistency about the movie is this: the Clone Army. They are amazing when they're a clone army on the side of the good people.
Mm-hmm.
When they suddenly all become bad people, that's when they all forget how to shoot and start falling over things.
Do you mean by the time it's A New Hope?
Yeah. So what changes in the clone army that makes them the ultimate fighting machine to, we're going to fall over and be really bad shots?
The real answer to that is they're no longer the clone army. There's loads of different shows and things that sort of build the bridge between those things. So by the time Order 66 is over and done with, there's a few years in between them getting rid of the clones and doing something else with them, to then just getting people around the galaxy to be the soldiers. That's not not a fun answer, but that is the answer.
Well, I feel stupid for asking the question because I should have known that. But that was my impression. They were the ultimate fighting machine, and then they weren't. But now you've answered my question for me.
I think only until recent years was it actually an answer, and it's within different things that not a lot of people would watch. But they're good things that people... Like, the animated series might look like they're for kids, but they're actually really good. I've seen most of them, so...
a point that we've made a couple of times about Star Wars on this podcast, though, is if you just stick to the 9 movies, then you are going to get stuck with questions like that. Okay. Anything else to say on Attack of the Clones?
Just off the back of the clones thing, it's so dumb that they make the point at the beginning of the movie that the Jedi aren't soldiers, but then all of a sudden a mysterious army turns up, and then they use that army without questioning it, which eventually backfires. But it's like, why haven't you noticed that this random army's appeared? And also, it's cloned from the bounty hunter that you're looking for, who's trying to kill Padme. Nobody questions that for a second. It's weird.
No, it does. There is a brief explanation in there, isn't there? Where I think Yoda says something like the dark side has clouded our foresight or something like that, and I think it's kind of an excuse. But you're absolutely right. It feels like a line that they've stuck in to answer the question that you just asked. I mean, 1 minute they're saying we're not soldiers, and the next thing Yoda's given orders. Do you know, I think the final point I want to make, because I think I've said everything I wanted to say, but the final thing to say is, in the movie, they spend quite a lot of time introducing us to characters that are going to be important later on.
Yeah.
So Jango Fett, Boba Fett, the family on Tatooine, and I think that's okay. I think it's fine. But again, it felt a little bit like I said about the Phantom Menace, where they're retrofitting things into the story rather than allowing the story to tell itself. And it was fine. It was great. Stuff with Django and Boba, fine. But they don't. Those characters don't need to be those people.
No, I agree with
sense?
that point. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so scores. You gave it 3. I gave it 4.
Yeah.
You went first last week, so it's
That's
my
right.
turn to go with my Benefit of Hindsight score, Attack of the Clones. I feel quite bad about this, okay? And the reason why I feel quite bad about this is I really, really didn't like it. I really didn't enjoy watching it. It's the first film that we've watched as part of doing this podcast, where I was actually quite looking forward to seeing it again, and halfway through I thought, what am I doing with my life? And and it's such a shame, because I do like Star Wars, and I do like the whole thing that it does, but I really didn't like it. It just felt to me there was too much wrong with it. Giant plot holes, bad CGI, bad dialogue, making good actors look bad. I didn't like it at all. I gave it a 4. I am going to give this rewatch score of 1.
Oh, okay. That's quite the leap there, yeah. What you just said there reminded me of the line in the movie where Obi-Wan does the mind trick and he goes, I want to go home and rethink my life. Yeah, that's what it was like.
Not deliberate, but so yeah, 1. Sam,
Okay.
rewatch score. No pressure.
Yeah, indeed. I always go a bit like ranty with my conclusion to it, so I gave it a 3. I think there's obvious problems which we've mentioned. There's different things about it. The one thing that I did want to say is there's a lot of ADR in that, and that's when they've gone back and re-recorded over the top of it, and it was very noticeable, and I hated that. But I think going into it, I was really looking forward to it, as I've said, and that carried through as I watched it. And there was a part of me that always sort of saw Anakin and Obi-Wan as sort of like a me and you kind of thing, like a father-son role. And I quite enjoyed that. So my score of 3 has changed to a 5. I've actually gone up because I really...
Wow.
It doesn't have to be perfect for me to enjoy it. It's Star Wars. I really like the action. It was an to me, this is like an unpopular opinion, but to me it improved from Phantom Menace, and I really enjoyed it. So 5, yeah.
Okay, so 1 from me, 5 from you, an overall rewatch score of 3. So it has gone down. That's my fault. I feel you referenced the father and son thing as a thing that you liked. I feel bad now for giving it a 1.
You don't have to do that because I said that, though. What doesn't
No, I
make
know.
sense about that sort of line, though, is that famously in Revenge of the Sith, Obi-Wan goes, "You are my brother, Anakin." And it's like, wait, in the other movie, you were his father. But yeah,
You're
that's
like
my
a
only
father
gripe
to me.
there.
You were my brother. Yeah. No, didn't like it. So okay. Final thing on Attack of the Clones is 1-word review.
I hadn't prepared this one this time around. So what I'm going to say is interesting.
Wow. Okay. I never prepare this. I always think spontaneity is the key. And I'm just going to go, I'm going to use the word cringe.
Wow, okay. I think my word just doesn't really make a lot of sense, but yeah, cringe is good as a good one.
Looking ahead to next week then, what is our next movie?
It seems like a bit of a dramatic change that we're going for. It probably isn't, but I like to think that it is. We're going to go for the 2006 Superman Returns movie, which is of course directed by Bryan Singer.
Controversial. I do remember watching this at the cinema. What are your memories of the movie?
This is a very interesting one for me, and I'm going to say it now just in case I forget to say it for the actual episode, but I'm happy to repeat it anyway for that episode. I had no idea at this point what a Superman was, and I think for me this is probably what happened when the Christopher Reeve movie came out and you just went, wow, Superman. So I have quite fond memories of actually going to see this. But I have seen it in recent years and it's not the greatest film ever, but I do have a sort of soft spot for it, let's say.
Okay. I don't think I've seen it since we sat and watched it in the movies. So it's been 18 years since I've seen this movie. And there's a theme that runs through all of these things, you know, that I don't know if you've picked up on this theme, but the theme is the theme of some of the movies that we watch together tend to be nostalgia, things that I enjoyed. And then because movie making in that way is cyclical, then we can enjoy again. So Indiana Jones, Star Wars, and you know, King Kong and Hugo, the outliers there. But I was excited to see this movie because I was a kid when Superman came out, and that was amazing. That was one of those big things of the 70s. So my expectations going into the movie were pretty good. Looking forward to watching it. Brandon Routh seemed well cast, but I don't think I liked it. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to say that I don't remember enough about it to give it an actual kind of whatever score. So I'm going to go right down. I'm going to go right down the middle with this movie. I'm going to say that it's a 5. Okay? Because I don't remember hating it. I don't remember particularly enjoying it. It's therefore got to be right down the middle. Fair enough. My memory score is 5.
Okay. I don't know if this is going to cause problems now, but same with me because I've got a connection to it from the past, but I remember it as much not being that great a film. I am also going to go with a 5. Is that a problem?
It's not a problem. I think it's really interesting. So what we have is a movie that is absolutely doing exactly what the podcast says it's going to do.
True.
Okay, we've given it a memory. We're not that clear on what the memory is, so we'll go bang down the middle and let's go away and see whether that score goes up or down, because it has an overall score of 5.
Yep. Interesting indeed.
Doesn't feel like a 5 though, does it?
No, I don't think it will be a 5 by the end, by the rewatch score.
Let's see. So thank you very much for listening. You can contact us as always through our email address, thebenefitofhindsightpodcast@gmail.com, and through our social media. Twitter is the main one. You'll have to do this. Over to you, Sam.
Yeah, on Twitter we are the Benefit of Hindsight Podcast, which is at TBO Hindsight Pod.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks very much for listening. As always, it's good night from me.
And good night from me too. May the force be with you.
Always.
Nice, I had that planned.
With the benefit of hindsight, we'll see were the movies true.